What's up everybody, my name is Kenneth and I am a foreigner living in the Philippines, here today to react and learn about how Tagalog took over the Philippines by Samuel Heinrich. This should be very interesting. I've learned previously that there's over 170 languages in the Philippines, and I believe there was over 10 languages with over a million speakers. So, that being said, I am very interested in why Tagalog actually became the main one that everyone has to learn. How that actually became the most popular one in the Philippines. Did they just have the most amount of speakers? Or was it influenced because Manila was speaking it? I'll be very interested to learn about that. But before we start with this video, I just want to give you guys some appreciation, because we have reached now 300 subscribers and our videos are getting quite a lot of views and likes, and it makes me really happy to see, so thank you guys so much for that. This video was actually recommended to me by Joshi Om, so if you also want to recommend me videos, then you should let me know in the comments and I'll check it out, and if I end up reacting to that, I'll give you credit for that. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for the recent activity on my page. And let's get right into this video and find out what really happened with the Tagalog. Let's see.
Take a look at this. This is the map of the Philippines, a country in Southeast Asia with over 120 languages, with 8 major regional languages.
120 languages. The other video we watched said 170. I don't know what's correct. Let me know in the comments.
Just spread throughout the archipelago like this. I grew up.
So these are like the major languages. You have obviously Tagalog. Oh god, am I really gonna pronounce all these? Pangasinan, Ilocano, Kapampangan, Bicolano, Waray, Cebuano, Hiligaynon. Did I do it, guys? Was that good enough? Was that good enough? Let's see.
Here, in this part of Mindanao, where Cebuano is spoken. And even though I've been technically learning Filipino from
Do Filipinos like to call it Cebuano? I know some people call it Bisaya. I can imagine if you're living outside of Cebu, like in Mindanao, and people say, oh, you're speaking Cebuano, maybe you're gonna get annoyed by that and be like, no, I'm speaking Bisaya. Or is everyone in agreement that it's called Cebuano? So I'm kind of confused why there's like two names. Why it's called Bisaya and Cebuano. I don't know. Let me know if you speak Bisaya, Cebuano, and you live outside of Cebu. Let me know. Do you mind when people call it Cebuano? Let's see.
Elementary through high school, I've picked up Cebuano way faster and better, because that was the language that was spoken around me, at school, in stores, in the public, everywhere. And unless I was watching television or any local Filipino movies, learning Filipino felt a bit inconvenient. At least that's how it was when I was a kid. Nowadays, I do spend more time with.
He said learning Filipino. Is Tagalog considered Filipino? I thought all the languages were Filipino. Tagalog is just one of them, the most popular. But is Filipino another word for Tagalog? Can you call Tagalog just Filipino language? Interesting.
The internet in Filipino spaces, where being exposed to the language more and more also gets me to value it more and more. But still got me thinking, how does a nation with over 120 languages choose one to represent them all?
Yeah, right.
Why Filipino?
Why Filipino? Or Tagalog?
Muray na aldaw sa Indogabos. I am Kai from the Bicol region and I speak Bicolano.
Upay nga adlaw, ako si Versil, tikan ko Leyte. Ako karon ay nagayakanhin Waray.
Leyte, understood Leyte. Do they speak Waray in Leyte? In southern Leyte, I know they spoke Bisaya. Maybe some parts speak Waray. Or he was saying something completely unrelated. I don't know.
Hi, magandang hapon. Ako nga pala si John. Galing akong Pasig at nagsasalita akong Tagalog o Filipino.
Those are just a few of the many languages you'd hear in the country today. Yet there are only 2 official languages, English and Filipino. The former is basically just a remnant of colonization that is still valued due to its international importance. I'll get more into that a little bit later, but for now, I'd mainly like to take a closer look at this one. because this language was never really foreign to the archipelago, yet its existence is still somewhat recent in Philippine history. Kinda. Let me explain.
Saying Tagalog is recent. Interesting.
In contrast to many nations with long-standing dominant languages, the Philippines historically didn't have one. In fact, before the Spanish colonization in 1521, there was no Philippines to even begin with.
Right.
Sure, the islands
Just a bunch of different like tribes with different languages, nothing really uniting them. That's the way I've learned it at least. And then the Spanish, they kind of all were united by the fact that they were colonized by the Spanish. That was like the uniting factor.
people and cultures all existed, but they were never unified. The way the archipelago is separated into different regions by water and mountains gave us this tapestry of languages and cultures shaped by geography. In 1521, the Spanish found the islands and brought some change, with a push for unity under a single banner and identity. Of course, the methods were oppressive and culturally destructive, as the race for conquest usually was. The writing systems got Latinized, the Spanish language was introduced.
Oh, really? It got Latinized. So before the Spanish, you actually had a different writing system?
For conquest usually was.
Wow, this looks interesting. What's this called, guys? Do you still use this? Is there some people in the Philippines that still use this writing system? Do you read left to right or right to left? This is so interesting. Looks really unique. I've really never seen anything like this. Huh. Wonder what happened to this.
The writing systems got Latinized, the Spanish language was introduced. And this archipelago was then named Las Islas Filipinas, the Philippine Islands. But as the Spanish era came to a close, a new colonial power was about to reshape the linguistic landscape of the Philippines. Cue the United
America?
States.
Let's go. Manila, is that a real poster? Manila, wow. Interesting. Is this like a propaganda poster? Accurate.
At this point, the Philippines was overflowing with languages. They had all the existing regional languages, they had Spanish as their previous official language, and were now being introduced to English by the Americans. Within the next few decades, a lot of changes were happening. And unlike during the Spanish era, where Spanish was mostly used among the nobles, clergy, and the Spanish themselves, the American approach had a much more widespread effect. These were the Thomasites. Some 600 American teachers who arrived in the Philippines in the beginning of the
What do you call that? Tom sites?
sites. These were the Thomasites.
Tom sites.
Some 600 American teachers who arrived in the Philippines in the beginning of the 20th century aboard the US Army transport Thomas. Schools
That's
throughout the
I was confused. What does that mean?
country suddenly all had American teachers who would introduce English
So
to
they actually shipped American citizens, English teachers, into the Philippines to teach the people English. That's really interesting. That's a lot of effort in the colonization. Was that normal for colonization? Did the Spanish do the same? Or is it something unique or something new that the Americans did? Never heard of that. They're just shipping teachers over there to teach them English? Oh, it worked.
the younger generation. This language, which never had a place in the country before, was now completely overtaking the lingering use of Spanish within just a few decades. Pause. I forgot to add some extra context just before moving on to the next section. To be fair, only about 10% of the country actually spoke Spanish as a first language at the time, and they were primarily
Really?
concentrated.
After 300 years of Spanish rule, only 10% spoke Spanish. It only took 3 decades, or a few decades, he said, to have English surpass it. I guess they didn't import Spanish teachers like the Americans did with English. That's interesting. Maybe they didn't really care to teach people Spanish. I don't know.
In the more urban areas that were also affected the most by war, so I'm not really sure how impressive that still sounds. But what I still do find interesting is how Mexico, which was also colonized by Spain, only 33 years less than the Philippines in fact, is a completely Spanish-speaking country, whereas the Philippines is not.
Right, yeah, they had like the same government, same Spanish colonizers. It's yeah, Philippines. There's no Spanish except very few areas. So that's interesting.
Anyways, I think I've been boring you guys by not talking about what you actually came here for, so let's get right into it. By the mid-1930s, this guy came around.
That's... I don't know who that is.
President
It's the guy on the money. Manuel... I don't know, Quezon?
President Manuel Quezon was in charge of the
I knew it! Let's go.
Commonwealth of the Philippines, which was basically this transition period for the country before it would eventually become fully independent. And in 1937, he took the first big step of bringing a local language into the spotlight by choosing Tagalog to be the basis of the Wikang Pambansa, or the...
So, I wonder why he chose Tagalog. Maybe they'll say in the video. It's interesting. So he just like kind of chose one of the 170 languages. Like this one will be the main one. Interesting.
national language.
When the national language law was enacted during the time of Quezon, they established Tagalog to be the basis for the national language.
This is Jeconaya Dreisbach.
I specialize in the sociolinguistics of migrant Filipino families, language contact, and Philippine language policies. Their plan was to establish a language that was called Filipino. It starts with the letter P, and it will be an amalgamation of different Philippine languages.
Ah, so they wanted to kind of like unite all the languages, take certain aspect from all the languages, or maybe just the big ones, and then create one like combined, fused together language called Filipino. Maybe pronounced Filipino.
When the 1987 Constitution was proclaimed, the Constitution claimed that the national language, now spelled with an F, Filipino, it claimed that there is already a language called Filipino that is already amalgamated and it will be further developed.
Filipino was based on a language already existing within the country, and it was further planned to absorb different parts of other Filipino languages to become...
So they're saying Tagalog was already around and it was already amalgamated. It was already a mixture of all the other languages before they even tried to mix it. But they want to mix it even more. That's interesting. So how did Tagalog end up being a mixture of all the languages? Just because it was kind of like in the center of them? Or just like being close to the other languages in like proximity? I wonder how that ended up being like a mix.
An amalgamation of sorts. And because of this, Filipino and Tagalog are not officially the same thing. Yet any Filipino you would ask would say that there's practically no difference between...
Wait, is Filipino a language that's very similar to Tagalog but barely any difference? Really? Is that what he's saying, or am I misunderstanding?
the two. So much so that many would even use the two names interchangeably, even if it's officially incorrect to do so. I mean, yes, there are minor differences in vocabulary, such as car being sasakyan in Tagalog, but kotse in Filipino, or...
Yeah, so there is a Filipino language. There's a language called Filipino, which is based on Tagalog, but also with input from the other languages. That's what I'm assuming here. And most Tagalog speakers say it's almost identical to Tagalog Filipino. So they use the word interchangeably. That makes sense. Wow, I didn't know that. I thought when people called it Filipino, they were just talking about Tagalog. But it's an actual separate language, although very similar.
shirt being baro in Tagalog but damit in Filipino. But
Right.
these differences are minuscule in comparison to what is identical between the two. Choosing Tagalog wasn't just a practice.
Would be interesting to see a sentence like, "Hey, my name is Kenneth" in Tagalog and in Filipino. Like, can you see the differences, or are they like, completely identical?
practical decision. It was political. Tagalog was familiar to the capital, steeped in revolutionary history, and had one of the most extensive literary traditions in the country.
Okay, there we go. So it was the revolutionaries used to speak it apparently, or something like that. And also the capital, of course, really influential. So it made sense. That makes sense. So it was just kind of like the obvious answer, I guess, out of all the languages.
But this decision, while being practical in some ways, left many feeling alienated. To Cebuanos especially, this felt like favoritism, as they were a big linguistic.
Right, that makes sense. There's a lot of Cebuano speakers or Bisaya speakers, so I can imagine I wouldn't like be happy about that.
Competitor as the country's most widely spoken regional language besides Tagalog.
The Cebuanos were fairly independent historically. Cebuanos have always been proud about being the first seat of Spanish colonial power in the Philippines, the first seat of Catholicism in the Philippines.
Yeah, because the Spanish came to Cebu first, right? So yeah, they probably had first contact. But it's kind of interesting then that they didn't become like the most powerful group within the Philippines. No, because they could like work together with them first almost.
Cebuanos already had an established grammar then. During that time, Cebuanos already established as a literary language. The Cebuanos, led by the brothers Vicente Soto and Filimon Soto, they were the senators from Cebu then. They very much expressed that the Bisaya should be the basis for the national language, primarily because it had the most number of speakers. So why not?
Wow. So actually, there was more Bisaya speakers than Tagalog, but still Tagalog became the main one. That's really interesting. That is kind of weird, right? I guess the capital is just more important then. That was what they concluded. Yeah, I can understand that that would cause some like internal conflict.
Make it as the national language.
This opposition went to go on even decades after Filipino was established, to a point where the government in Cebu itself banned the use of Tagalog as a medium of instruction in schools. Despite all this, the popular advantage Cebuano once had ended up diminishing as more and more people started learning Tagalog throughout the century.
Do I feel bothered about
So after they kind of made Tagalog the main language, then everyone started learning it, and then it actually surpassed Cebuano. But before it was made the official language, Cebuano was actually more popular. Interesting.
Filipino being a national language? No, not really. As I said, I think that's positive effect towards our country. I still think it has become effective because it has been so much ingrained into our educational system that it's pretty much all right now.
Do you learn Filipino in school or Tagalog? If you grow up in Cebu, for example, do you learn Tagalog or Filipino, or is it like the same thing basically?
People don't.
What's like the official way they call it in school? Like, is it Tagalog lessons or Filipino lessons? It's kind of weird being born a Filipino and then you have to do Filipino lessons as if you're not Filipino. It's kind of interesting.
Really care that much. We learn it at school and we end up using it when we move to different parts of the country, which is very effective.
Growing up in Bicol or Southern Luzon, I had no problem.
What age do you start learning Filipino if you're a native Bisaya speaker, for example? Because it must be difficult. Filipinos really speak a lot of languages. It's very impressive. It must be very difficult. I wonder how they manage to, and everyone's fluent in it. Like from my point of view, I don't speak Bisaya or Tagalog, but I see how they can like communicate. Like everyone speaks Tagalog, so it's interesting. They must begin very early, I think. Don't know. Let me know.
With it being the national language, since a lot of us could speak Filipino if we weren't speaking in Bicolano. A lot of my relatives in my mother's side live in Cebu, and some are living in Iligan and Cagayan de Oro. They all speak Bisaya. And when I started learning the language and being surrounded by people who speak Bisaya, I also later on learned that they don't normally converse in Tagalog. They would rather talk to me in English when translating words or conversing.
Being like a native Tagalog speaker, I think it's normal. For me at least, it's It's nice, it's an advantage to have because where I'm from, the capital at least, I could easily communicate with other people from the capital. But at the same time, it's a bit different, especially like in other parts of the Philippines where Bisaya is the main language and not necessarily like Tagalog. I mean, for me, it's very comfortable that I speak Tagalog. In terms of me like learning another language or like other languages, I'm very neutral about it, but I also understand culturally.
Do people in Manila or in Tagalog native speaking areas know less languages? Because I'm guessing they don't have to learn Cebuano or another language in the Philippines. So they'd only speak Tagalog and English then. While in Cebu, oh, sorry, we're back. While in Cebu, they'd speak three languages. They speak Cebuano, Tagalog, and English. I wonder if that's true. Like if they actually just know less languages in Tagalog areas.
Wanting to learn other cultures and other languages as part of the Philippines, like big culture. I'm neutral about it, but at the same time, it's not something I would be envious about, but it would be something I would be interested in.
So this is what the Philippines did. But I'm also a bit curious about what other multilingual countries did to resolve this type of issue.
Yeah.
There's 4 official languages. There's like the 4 main ones, and then like Italian, Latin language, which is spoken in some of the cantons. In some cantons, it's like both languages are represented. For example, in Bern, it's both French and German. Other cities, for example, like in Zurich, I think it's just mostly in German. And in like the Italian canton, it's like Italian speaking. I mean, in school, everyone is supposed to learn at least French, at least like where I came from. For me personally, I don't think it's too big of a problem, but also because like where I live is only in German.
Well, we do have our main languages, which is Hindi and English. Most people do speak it, but there's a huge distinction between the North and South. In South, they don't speak Hindi, which is the most important, like, used language in India. But they do speak English. But in North, not a lot of people speak English. There's a lot of religious beliefs to it and like a lot of cultural aspects to it. Like people stick to their own languages. It's like, oh, my language is better than yours, and I want to stick with it. So my first language was Bengali, and then I had to speak obviously English and Hindi as like second and third languages. But usually you have to do like 2 languages. One your state language, one is the Hindi, and one is English. You know, Hindi came from a lot of like distinct languages, and they all kind of summed up between like Sanskrit, Bengali. They all kind of sound similar to Hindi a little bit by little. So they all kind of just merge into one, and Hindi is like the ultimate.
So the Singapore model fits the context of the Philippines. The students are required to learn 3 languages. First, of course, English. Second, their mother tongue. So if you're Chinese, you're gonna learn Mandarin. If you're Malay, you're gonna learn Malay. If you're Tamil, then you're gonna learn Tamil, and so on. They are also required to learn a different language. So if you're Chinese, you have the choice to learn Malay or Tamil. That's a dream, probably, that I have.
I still feel more comfortable with Cebuano than with Filipino. But I don't think that there would have been a solution that would have appealed to everyone either way. The Philippines is diverse, which is both a feature and a challenge. A language simply had to be chosen, because governing a country otherwise would be
It would be very difficult if there's not like a central language.
difficult and expensive. If Cebuano were to hypothetically have been chosen as the main language, there still would have been complaints, just by different people. And this time Cebuano
It would be
wouldn't
very strange having the capital speak another language than the main language in the country. But then again, they could have selected another capital. Maybe Cebu would have been the capital. Who knows? I wonder also why Manila was chosen. Was it the bigger city, or was Cebu also bigger? Because it seems like there's more history in Cebu. I'm not saying Manila shouldn't be the capital. I'm just curious as to why they chose that city. I guess it was the capital of the Spanish Philippines. Maybe that's why.
We have the capital city advantage that Tagalog does. So I'm fine with the way things are. And hey, the way everybody's becoming more and more connected through the internet is opening up an interesting opportunity for the different languages to find a middle ground naturally, without it having to be artificially done through law. So I'm pretty excited for what the future holds in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really good video, man. This video was again by Samuel Heinrich. Really good video. I'm gonna like this. Thank you to Joshi, who actually recommended this video to me. Yeah, guys, if you have some videos you want me to watch, like I said, let me know in the comments or message me, and I'll check it out. And yeah, I make one daily video reacting to the Philippines. So if you like this type of content, then you should subscribe and see me in the next video. Alright guys, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye bye.